Hello, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you're having a lovely summer wherever it is that you are. Now, I normally start with a little bit of an update of my week, and I spent last weekend in London, which is very lovely, but I did learn that I need to speak to my members before I head for a shopping trip to London, because the idea was that we were picking up a friend at the airport on Sunday. So we do a bit of shopping on a Saturday. And I thought I had this perfectly planned to avoid the crazy busy areas, because I don't like shopping when it's really busy around me. And I only went and bloody planned to go to like the shopping part of Notting Hill. And guess what? It was very, very busy. But I have been assured that there are better places to go. So next time I'll ask for help. But actually, I did manage to get in an awful lot of activity that day. We covered about 28,000 steps, much to my husband's dismay. And I think it just shows how easily, especially like if you're having like a city break, how easily your activity can just add up. And the only other thing that is happening that I should tell you about is that this podcast is going out on the 31st of July, which happens to be the last day that you can sign up before we shut the doors to coaching for August. We will be opening with intake, so we'll have an autumn intake starting in September. But if you wanted to sign up before then, you've got today to do it. If not, you can join the waitlist. I'll put everything into the show notes anyway. And my plan for August is to be giving all my energy into the membership to the members that are currently there, and also getting a little bit of time to spend with my family, which is why I'm also taking a couple of weeks off the podcast after this one. So that is where we stand. Now, I normally get inspiration for my podcasts from conversations that I have with women, either on Instagram or in the membership, or from listening to books. Like I listen to audiobooks when I run, or this time it was actually from a conversation with my husband, because when we're in London, he was like, when people ask you, what do you do? What do you say? And it's something I actually think about quite a lot, because there's always that nuance in it, isn't there? Because when people do ask me what my job is and what it is that I do, what I normally say, and this is what I was telling my husband, is that the women that I work with have often been on or off diets most of their adult life. And what I really want to do is show those women that they can reach their goals without having to put their life on hold, without having to go on yet another diet, and by instead focusing on those things that have them feeling good right now as well as in the future. But when I say this, sometimes there's this little flicker of doubt in the people that I'm talking to. This sort of like, that sounds lovely, Ruth, but that isn't going to actually help you lose weight, is it? And I think there's this real belief that if you're not on a proper hard diet, then nothing is happening. And like, it should feel hard, that you should feel like you're restricting something or you're going without. There needs to be an element of suffering within it if you want to make progress. And I do understand why we feel like this, because I think it's what we've been led to believe, what we've been taught, that if it doesn't feel hard, if you're not feeling quite hungry a lot of the time, then are you just getting away with something? But if we look at what those behaviors actually are, and here I'm thinking eating meals with plenty of protein and fiber, moving your body, doing some form of resistance training, having an awareness of what you're eating, none of that is a diet. Those are just things that are going to have you feeling good and have you feeling healthier as well. But they happen to be the same things that also support fat loss, which is probably why they get lumped in with dieting. But they were never only about losing weight. These are things that are worth doing whether or not you have a fat loss goal. And I see that when I share recipes and people will comment, why are you saying that if you're not trying to lose weight, or you don't need to lose weight, or whatever it is? And I'm like, I would eat these meals regardless. These aren't fat loss meals. And that's my whole point. And if you spoke to the women inside my app, some of them have a maintenance goal, but a lot of them would say that they're focused on fat loss. And some of them would very happily call it a diet. And this is completely fine, because there is nothing wrong with wanting to lose a little bit of weight. But the way we go about it means that when life does happen, get in the way, because it will, it doesn't grind to a halt. It doesn't get abandoned, because it isn't another diet that you're gritting your teeth through until you can just get back to normal. It's just how you live. And it feels like a really good time of year to be talking about this, because summer is here, and summer is often a time where that belief gets properly tested. Yes, we have holidays. We've had this lovely weather, which means that we're probably having more barbecues, more social events, and just more days where the routine that we've worked hard on can get thrown out the window. And for a lot of you, summer means something that you just need to survive, and then you'll repair it again in September. You either put everything on hold and you tell yourself you will get serious again in September when the kids are then back at school, which I do totally understand. The other thing that you can sometimes do is you try and stay rigidly on your plan during your holiday, during that time where you're meant to be relaxing. And then you end up not really enjoying the holiday itself, but also not really properly sticking to the plan either. And it feels like a bit of a lose-lose situation. And this is the tension that I really want to get into today, because I think a lot of us feel stuck in between those two options. On one side, there's the, I'm not going to go on a diet. I'm just going to focus on being healthy and hope it sorts itself out. On the other side, there's the, I'm ready, I'm dieting, I'm all in, I've got time to properly do this. There's no messing about. And those two camps, great. But most of us spend our lives bouncing back between the two. And we don't really ever end up anywhere in between. And what I've actually come to really believe is that those two places aren't where the best stuff actually happens. It is in that in between middle area where the best progress actually happens. And I've seen it time and time again with the women I work with. It might feel slightly different from a normal approach you take because you're not white knuckling your way through it. You're not putting your entire life on hold. And it's not the version that you're necessarily going to feel like you've cut everything out your life, but it is the version that works. And when I'm talking about it working, you make great progress doing it, but you also are far more likely to sustain it. And this is what I want to talk about today. How do you diet without dieting, and what that actually means in practice, and why both of those extremes can let us down. And we also want to discuss the tools that we can borrow from the dieting world without borrowing all of the mindset and the misery that can come attached to them. And I want to start with the one that I think can trap the most people, because it's something that feels very logical while you're in it. But annoyingly and unfairly, it tends to catch the people that are trying the hardest. So you decide that you want to lose a little bit of weight. So you cut back, you eat a bit less. And for a little while, you might find that it's working, or maybe the needle isn't quite moving as quickly as you'd like, or not much at all. So you do the only sensible thing that anyone in your position would be tempted to do. And that is you decide to cut back a bit further. Because if eating less is how you lose weight, then eating even less is going to be better still, right? So you knock a little bit off calorie wise, you swap that proper breakfast that you've been having for something a little bit smaller, or for nothing at all. You tell yourself you don't need much at lunchtime, maybe a coffee and a small salad or a protein bar. And maybe even during the day, there's this little kind of tally in your head that when you're feeling the hunger and you say no to things, you feel like, oh, great, this must be really working. This is how it should feel. Because you're busy during the day, right? And you're experiencing those things. But the problem with this logic is that there is no bottom to it. There's always a little bit more that you could cut. So when things do start to slow down, and they often do, you've got nowhere to go except lower. And it might never even occur to you that the approach itself could be the problem, because that approach has never told you to stop. It's only ever telling you to have less. So you go lower and you go lower and you end up chasing a number when the number itself was never really the thing that was going to fix this issue. And this is something I've got so much experience with, not just from helping members with it, but in the past, it's something I used to do all the time. I would keep my breakfast and my lunch as small as possible so that I could save my calories for the evening, because my logic was that I tend to overeat in the evening. So save my calories for then. And then I can have some wine and chocolate and the things I really want to enjoy once the kids are in bed and I can relax. And my goal was that as long as my calories were low enough, and I would often aim for, as low as I can, I would feel like I've won. But I never stopped to ask myself whether any of the food that I was eating during the day was filling me up, or whether any of it was giving me any energy, whether any of it was actually making me feel good. I was just looking at that budget and whether I was below it. And for you, it might not be having wine and chocolate each evening. It might be that you're trying to save your calories through the week so that you can have a lot more at the weekend. It might be that you skip breakfast and lunch so that you can have that bigger meal with your family and it doesn't end up tipping you over. It might be something else entirely. But I think most of us have experienced a version of this where we're just aiming to eat underneath a number. And the thing with this is that it catches up with us. You can hold it together, perhaps through the morning where you're being good and you feel like you're winning. But then by the evening, when you've already had your dinner and you're not technically hungry, you're looking in the fridge and you're feeling like, what is wrong with me? I clearly have no willpower. How can everyone else seem to manage this apart from me? It feels like there's something wrong with you. And I remember feeling like this too. And there isn't anything wrong with you. When you have been that hungry all day, you are going to make different decisions in the evening. It's not this lack of willpower or weakness or whatever you're telling yourself. In fact, I'd say that your body is doing exactly the right thing, the thing it's meant to do, which is to make sure that you eat when it thinks that food is scarce. So the evening snacking, the picking, the feeling that you completely fall apart the moment the day goes quiet, that isn't a moment that you failed. It's just the second half of a day spent where you haven't eaten enough. Your body spent all day being quietly told that there wasn't enough to go around. And now in the evening, it's collecting what it feels it's owed. You're not weak. You were just hungry. And hunger doesn't always mean a full stomach. It can just mean restricted too. And something I will get asked a lot, and I think it's why so many people feel like this approach works for them, is, but I've managed this for a while, so why did it suddenly stop working? And really, the answer here is that restriction can work for a while for some people, which is exactly what makes it so convincing. Some people only manage it for a few days. Some people manage a few weeks. How long you can manage it varies from person to person. And that depends on your life and how much stress you've got going on. But the fact is that it ends for everyone eventually. And that is the point. On top of that, most of us are also expecting the weight to come off quicker than is likely realistic. So we decide it isn't working a little bit too early and we give up often long before it's had a chance to do what it's meant to do. But there's actually something quite reassuring in the research here. So when researchers put different diets head to head, and here we're thinking, low carb against low fat, against one popular diet over here and another over there, the thing that predicts whether someone is going to succeed isn't the diet that they picked, it's whether they could stick to it. So being able to keep going is going to beat what could be theoretically a perfect plan every single time. And this, I think, changes the question that you should be asking yourself. And it stops becoming, what's the best diet that's going to give me the quickest results? Because let's be honest, that is the goal for a lot of you. And it should instead become, what can I actually keep doing on an ordinary week in my real life that I live right now with my family, with tiredness, with whatever's going on? Can I see myself still eating this way in a year's time? Are these meals actually things that I enjoy? And those are going to be the things that are more useful to ask yourself. Now, there is an element of change, and we do sometimes need to work on change. There's a saying that is, it's not motivation that you need, it's action first, and then motivation comes from action. So we do need to make change. But if you hate it off the bat, if you're just waiting for it to end, then it's likely not the right approach for you. So when I tell you that you might need to eat a little bit more rather than less during the day, it can sound really, really strange when you've been spent your lifetime being told the opposite. But it isn't really about more or less food at all. Instead, it's about building something that you really can keep doing rather than just enduring it, something that makes you feel good. So instead of how low can I go, it's actually what can I see myself living with? Now, you might be now convinced and thinking, right, okay, I don't want to restrict my calories. I'm just going to forget about fat loss entirely and focus on healthy food, and then the weight will just sort itself out. I thought that too. And I just thought I'd focus on health food and the rest would work itself out. And it would be lovely, wouldn't it, if you could just do that. But not only did I do this, I also meet a lot of women who are eating on paper very healthy diets, but aren't losing weight, and in some cases gaining weight. And I've spoken about these examples before, but we do need to remember that healthy and fat loss are not the same thing. And I think that's something that is very important to remember, because you can eat loads of really nourishing, nutrient-dense food and still be eating more energy than your body is using. So a food can be healthy and calorific at the same time. Both things can be true at once. So if we picture a lovely, healthy salad for lunch, we're going to put in loads of leaves, lots of different baby leaves. Let's go there. We're going to put in nice, generous glug of olive oil, because this is good, cold pressed olive oil, some nuts, some seeds, some feta, some chicken as well. And every single thing in this bowl is going to be so nutrient dense and so tasty and so lovely. But that lunch could quite easily be 800, 1000 calories. And for some, that might be fine. For others, that's not going to be helping them with fat loss. So you can be eating this beautiful looking nutrient dense diet and not lose an ounce. And it's not because of anything you've done wrong. It's just with then the calorific side of those foods. The other thing about when you're only focusing on eating those healthy foods and not thinking about fat loss at all is that when things do relax, you can lose the awareness completely. And this is part of the reason why I don't think we should throw away the fat loss lens, and we do want to keep that awareness because it's going to help you see what's actually working and what isn't. But the good news is that when you're focusing on the habits that make you feel better, you're also far less likely to overeat. But this is a bit of a learning process. It's an awareness that you're building. And we do want to keep going to begin with and notice the changes it's making, because these are things that if you notice how good they're making you feel, you will want to keep doing them. And when we talk about it fitting with life, I think we do also need to remember that food isn't just fuel, like can be enjoyment. And I've spoken before about how I ruined cake in the past. And one thing that I would do with the over restriction side, where I'm trying to go as low as possible, I might see a cake sitting on the side, like any cake, not a particularly amazing one. And what I do is I just take tiny weeny slithers of it throughout the day. Tiny bit here, tiny bit there. Could call it tidying the edges, I guess. But more often than not, and I knew I did it, I'd know this at the end of the day, but I'd end up eating way more than if I just sat down and had one piece, one proper slice. Logically, it didn't even make sense to me then, but I think each time I was convinced that I'd only really want that slither and it would be okay. The other thing I do is if I did, like even with my Belgian buns, which are a favourite, I'd end up eating them on the go whilst I'm like rushing or picking bits in the car and then getting back and only having the middle left, but not really paying attention. And if I wasn't paying attention, maybe it was like it wasn't really happening and it didn't count. The point is I was in full reaction mode. And these things that are there for enjoyment didn't really feel enjoyable. Now, if I'm going to have a cake, and I'm going to use a Belgian bun because it is my absolute fave, sometimes I don't have the whole thing. Sometimes I'll share it with my husband. But the difference is that now I know I can have all of it if I want to, because I'm sitting down. I've got it in front of me on the plate. I'm actually paying attention to it. I'm actually enjoying it. I'm tasting it. I know when I've had enough. And if I do eat the whole thing, it's because I wanted the whole thing. And that's completely fine too. I don't have any guilt. I'm choosing to have a whole Belgian bun rather than picking at those average things more often. And this is the no crap cake condition. You think less often, more enjoyable. Saying no to those rushing times, those slithers, or the bang average stuff means that we can say yes more often to the things that we really do actually want and do enjoy. So it just makes us enjoy cake, because that is part of life as well. I've got a member, lovely member, Bethan, who describes this really well. So when she first started, she told me in a forum that if she'd started a diet before, she'd have eaten some chocolate and she'd thought, well, that's it, I've blown it, I've messed up. And she'd given up completely, and then she wouldn't lose any weight. But since being with us, she's had social events, family events, loads of things going on. She's eaten chocolate and she's had incredible cake all the way through. She's lost a great amount of inches, fab amount. She joined us in May. But most importantly, none of the things that have been happening, the extra food that she'd been having at these events, has made her give up. And she actually sent me this message about this recently. I'm actually going to find and read you the message that Bethan sent me because I absolutely love it. Here we go. She said, "This is exactly the sort of healthy approach to eating and weight loss I've been looking to do for ages. It's got to be manageable, sustainable and effective, and ultimately not guilt-ridden, so I'll stick to it." And what Bethan is actually describing here, without using any technical jargon, is something that researchers do have a name for. They call it flexible restraint, and it means allowing yourself a choice, a real choice, while keeping your overall intentions in mind. So rather than just a rigid version, which runs entirely on those strict black and white rules where you have a biscuit and it means the whole day is a write-off and you might as well then eat everything. When researchers looked at what actually works over the long term, flexible restraint is something that keeps coming out ahead of the rigid kind again and again, which does make complete sense when we think about it, because the rigid version has that failure built in and the flexible version has nothing there to break in the first place. I was listening to a book. It wasn't about fat loss or anything like that, but they said Don't let a slip become a slide. And I think that's the thing. Everyone has moments where they don't manage to do everything perfectly. We're human. And what we need to then make sure we do is that it doesn't just slide out of our control. So we make these choices instead of living in this reaction mode. But if we're not dieting in the old punishing sense, but we're not ignoring fat loss and just hoping for the best, what are we actually doing? And this is where I think there are some really useful tools that we can borrow from the dieting world. We just use them differently. So we use them to understand ourselves better rather than to punish or police ourselves. So it's the same tools, but with a different job and a different mindset attached to them. Now, I did a whole episode a little while ago about the research of a study that was done on people who lose weight and then actually keep it off. It's this huge ongoing piece of research from the National Weight Control Registry. It's enormous. It's got tens of thousands of people who have lost a significant amount of weight and then they've kept it off for years, some of them for decades. And I will put a link to that in the show notes if you do want to go back and listen. But I am going to just discuss little bits of it here. Now, I have mentioned one of the areas already, and it's one of my favorite ones. And that is that one of the things that they found is that the people who succeed don't do it all the same way. There is no single diet that they follow. Some eat one way, some eat the other, some low carb, some not, some 3 meals a day, some more. But what they share isn't the meal plan at all. What they share instead is this set of behaviors. So they tend to keep some kind of eye on certain things, some form of self-monitoring. So they notice early when something's starting to drift rather than just waking up months later, a couple of stone heavier and panicking about it. And they keep fairly consistent routines. So their weekdays and their weekends don't look too different. They might be slightly different, but not too different. They stay active in an ordinary way. They're not punishing themselves in the gym. They're just moving regularly as part of their normal life. And the reason that this matters so much is that it does take the pressure off finding the perfect diet. We're often looking for this thing that looks most perfect on plan, but really the people who lose weight for good aren't the ones who finally found that. They're the ones who found a way of living that they could actually keep doing. And that is what I want to show you. This is the secret. It is about mindset and about this belief that you can just make these changes you want to keep and you will get to where you want to get to. And it can happen so much quicker than you think. I've had members lose a huge amount of weight. It's like Hayley, who lost 27 kilograms in her first year. She didn't feel like she was punishing her way through it. And she did allow this flexible restraint. But because she was able to keep going, she still lost a significant amount of weight. And I see that time and time again. And it lines up with what we know about how people change a habit and keep it changed. It's never just try harder or want it more. It's that ordinary, repeatable stuff. Tracking a little bit if that works for you, planning ahead a little bit, solving the problem when something gets in the way, reflecting on what's working and what isn't working without throwing out everything. And this is good because trying harder is exhausting and we always run out of being able to try harder eventually. But a routine is something we can keep doing. It just works in the background and keeps us going. It helps us just get on with our life. Like I love the habit of doing one thing each evening that makes us feel better. And I actually had a message earlier from someone who said they've got ADHD and they really struggle with meal prepping and organization. Now I have ADHD as well. And I always thought that I was never somebody who could organize or think ahead. But it turns out that my brain actually really, really loves routine. But it was just bringing in those things that mean that when my brain is busy and active, I've got those things to fall back on that I'm not even having to think about anymore. And that works really, really well for me. And one of the tools that I do want to hand over to you from that study, because it is simple and it does work, is what the researchers call implementation intention, which is a really clunky name for something that's actually incredibly simple. It just means that you're going to decide in advance exactly what you're going to do in a specific situation. So if this happens, then I'll do that. So instead of this vague hope for the best, I'll try to eat well this week, which is going to give your tired evening self nothing really to cling on to. There's nothing concrete there. It does become more rigid, more concrete. If you get home late and you're tired, I'm still going to have that meal that I've got ready at the weekend. Or if I can't fit in my gym session today, I'm still going to do a PJ workout. It's something that you've decided when you are calm. So you're not making that choice in the moment when you're really struggling, when your brain is already full. Deciding ahead of time in that if-then way makes you much more likely to then follow through. Now, I don't track my calories and I haven't for a long time. I did in the past. And I think it's important to know that you don't need to track your calories to lose body fat. And lots of people don't. But having an awareness of how much you're eating, especially if you've got a fat loss goal, is really helpful. And for some people, that awareness might come from tracking for just a short period of time, not forever, not obsessively. And I've tracked in the past. So I've got a really good idea as to the calories in my meals. I'm also likely, if I was focusing on fat loss and I wasn't sure of the calories in something, I might well put it into a tracking app just to see. So I've got an idea. But again, I don't feel like that's something I always have to do, because I know that if I'm cooking those meals that aren't full of those calorie dense foods, the high fat, high sugar things, and I'm using lots of high volume foods, and here we're thinking like loads of veg and loads of lean proteins, etc., then the calories are going to be pretty good without me having to really think too much about it, because I'm aiming for 3 meals a day. That's for me. And if fat loss was the goal, I probably would weigh out those more calorific foods like cheese, because those little things can just really easily add up, like so easily. But all of this knowledge came from what tracking gave me when I did do it. So it's not a habit that I've had to keep forever, but 3 meals a day with plenty of protein and fiber, and knowing that as long as I'm not going mad with the calorie dense foods, I'm going to be about where I need to be. So I'm not setting out to memorize my meals. That would be really tiring. This is something that's just built up over time on its own. And that is the thing about these tools. You use them for a while, they teach you something, and then you can let go of them when they are there. So even though I'm not tracking calories, it's something I am still aware of. Think of it as stabilizers on your bike. Now, I want to talk to you about rules, because this is an area where I think a lot of us can get properly stuck. And it's quite understandable why we do. If we give ourselves a rule, it feels really comforting, and it's often something we can really follow to begin with. So when someone hands you that nice strict plan, this food is yes, and this one is a no, absolutely not. Don't you dare eat after that time of day, and make sure that you're eating before that time of day. That feels good. That feels like something we can remember and get behind. I think the reason we like it is because we're like, great, I don't need to think anymore. Somebody's done the thinking for me. I don't need to weigh anything or make any judgment calls. Whew, what a relief. Because when your life is very busy and your head is already completely full of everyone else's needs, the idea of not having to decide one more thing feels so lovely. So I understand the appeal. And that's likely because when we've had so many decisions to make already across the day, it gets harder to keep making good decisions. Decision fatigue is something I speak about a lot, and it's real, because I think we all suffer from this. It's those teeny tiny decisions that, no matter how small, are stacking up through the day until you cannot face making another one. And I've mentioned Barack Obama before, but apparently that is why he wore the same suit or the outfit every single day when he was in office, because he was removing one small decision so he had more left for the big, important ones. So by the evening, when you've already made about 1,000 small, tiny decisions for everyone else in the house, there just isn't really much room left in the tank for making careful choices about any food or our fitness or our health. Anything that you can do that reduces the number of decisions that you have to make, perhaps a simple routine, a little bit of planning, a default meal, as I was speaking about with ADHD brains, something that is going to make it easier in the time that you can do in advance. So it doesn't need to be a detailed, elaborate meal plan. It can just be thinking about what you're having in advance and knowing that the ingredients are there. But there's another side to these strict rules. And when I first started researching this again recently, one thing that was coming up is we like breaking rules. And I thought, well, I don't like breaking the rules. If I tell myself I can't have it and then I have it, I don't feel good about breaking that rule, but I've broken it. And if anything, I feel bad about it. But it's what having that rule does before you've broken it. Because the moment you tell yourself that you can't have something, you give it this power. It becomes this forbidden fruit. And this is what researchers call scarcity mindset. The less available we make something, the more our brain fixates on it. So the chocolate you've banned isn't just then quietly sitting in the cupboard, it's in your head all day. The rule didn't make you want it any less, it's actually made you want it more. And the thing to remember is a rule and a routine are not the same thing. A helpful routine is going to reduce the decisions you don't want to make ahead of time. A rigid rule removes the judgment you actually need to keep. So those two things are very different. Routines, yes. Rules, we avoid. Say your rule is going to be no eating after 8 o'clock in the evening. It's a very popular one. People doing time restricted feeding, intermittent fasting, whatever you want to call it. And on a normal Tuesday, it might work really well. But then a night comes along where you're out for dinner and it doesn't arrive at the table until 8:30, 9 o'clock. So the rule is already broken before you've even eaten a thing. What happens next is often not, oh dear, I've eaten a little bit later than usual. Never mind. It's, well, I've broken the 8 o'clock rule now. So the day is a write-off. So I might as well have the pudding and everything else because I can eat as late as I want tonight now. You might as well have everything that is on offer and then I'll start again properly. It might even be that you start again tomorrow. But the point is that because you are now eating later, you've just decided that you'll go all in with that. And an example of having these rules for me is like giving up biscuits. And I found myself, this is years and years ago, I do it all the time. I'd give up biscuits or give up cake. I wouldn't give up all sweet things because I wasn't that stupid, but I'd give up one of them. And it would make me eat more of the other because I was allowed it. And that happened every time. I knew it, but I still did it. Or the people that give up alcohol for January and then end up like really going all in for drinking in February. The rules that we're setting aren't keeping us on track. All they're giving us is a nice little cliff edge to fall off the moment that life doesn't cooperate. Whereas if you're working with intentions rather than rules, with a general sense of direction, a little bit of flexibility, then one late night dinner isn't going to undo anything. One biscuit now and again is a choice that you've made. There's no edge to fall off because you were never balanced right at the precipice. You just carry on to the next day because there's nothing to restart. And that's why we use minimums and optimals inside the app with members rather than one single rigid, you should do this. We have those minimums to fall back on. And it's something I've talked about in last week's episode as well. But it really is worth thinking about what you can manage on those hard days as well as the best days. So you have in place that if-then thinking, the smallest version of the thing that you want to do so that you can keep going. It just means that you're never stuck between choosing between perfect and then completely abandoning it, because life is always going to happen. It's always going to get in the way. It's not going to stop just because you've got a fat loss goal. It will still show up. You know, life is the plan. And we want to make sure that we're living that and enjoying that too. Now, you hear me talk about feeling calm and feeling in control fairly often. Everything feels easier when we feel calmer. But the thing I want to say about this is that doesn't mean that you need everything in a row, all your ducks in a row before you decide to embark on a fat loss goal. Because I'd hate for anyone to hear that and feel like they're disqualified before they even start. I don't think you have to feel calm before you make the choice to lose weight, because life is messy. And if you waited for calm, then you'd be waiting forever. But I do think that if you're feeling really overwhelmed and feeling like everything's chaotic before you've even began, then your first priority isn't the diet itself. It's actually sitting down and working out what is actually realistic. So thinking about those minimums, what you can actually manage each day, and giving yourself a bit of certainty to help you feel a bit more in control. Small and manageable, making sure it's realistic, just a few habits that can bring you a sense of calm, because everything will get easier if you're making it a little bit easier in advance. The consistency that you're looking for, all of it. It will feel much easier when we just focus on a few things to get us started that we can make the priority. Realistic is key here. And rather than just plowing on through, it is worth checking in with yourself and going, right, why am I feeling overwhelmed at the moment? Because sometimes we think we're overwhelmed about the food, but the food is just where it all shows up. So we can look at a few things and see if any of them feel relevant for you. So it might be that you're somebody who's feeling a bit overwhelmed and chaotic because you're not getting enough sleep. This is really hard because when you're not getting enough sleep and you're running on empty, your cravings for food are going to be so much louder. Every decision that you're making feels like this fog, and you can actually feel like it's insatiable, the hunger that you're getting. And at this point, the best thing that you can do for your eating is going to be going to bed a little bit earlier. Or it might be that you just have never had time to sit down and make a plan, that you're constantly stuck in that reaction mode. You're just going from one meal to the next, deciding in the moment, feeling chaotic, out of control, not really thinking about what's in the food. And at that point, when you're feeling like that, it's the worst time to decide anything, because I don't know about you, but I make terrible decisions when I'm very, very hungry. So then just finding like 10 minutes even at a weekend just to think ahead a little bit, or the habit of just do one thing each evening to make tomorrow morning easier, that can really help, because starting the day with a high protein breakfast and feeling like you're winning already oof, that is game changing. And the big one that I see with women of this age is that they aren't considering their own time and energy. And a bit like the no crap cake condition, if you say no to the things that aren't that good, you get more opportunity to say yes to the things you really like. I think it works in life too. Often we're pouring so much energy into all other directions and everyone else, and there's nothing left for us at the end of it. And these aren't things that we necessarily are going to want to stop, but sometimes there are things that we're saying yes to without even considering our own time and energy. And I think even just taking a moment and saying, do I actually realistically have time for this? And making sure that you are putting in a little bit, even if it's small, a little bit of time for yourself. And this isn't going to change overnight, but this is an ongoing project that you can think about, just occasionally saying no, just when you can, so that you get to say yes to the things that have you feeling your best. So at the beginning, you might not feel very calm at all, and that's okay. And you don't have to, but you can start putting in one or two small habits or practicing a few things that can help you feel a bit better, because when you feel calmer, when you've slept well, when you've looked at those things that are going to give you more headspace, then it feels easier. And there's another reason that feeling calm makes it easier, because it's not just about not getting enough sleep. When we're feeling stressed, it ramps up those cravings as well. You know, all the times that we're feeling bad are the times that we're then wanting to reach for food. When we're not actually feeling that hungry at all, we're just frazzled. And the odd thing about that kind of eating that we get when we're really feeling stressed is that you get the hit from the first bite, maybe the second, but everything after that is just chasing that feeling of that first bite. And stress also makes planning ahead feel completely impossible. And it makes those in the moment decisions so much harder to get right. And it doesn't affect everyone in the same way, because some people actually lose their appetites entirely when they're feeling stressed. But if you do know that stress is a trigger for you, then reducing the unnecessary ones as much as you can isn't some separate self-care project that's different from fat loss. It might actually be the thing that makes everything else feel possible. And a huge area is that willingness to be able to adapt and adjust, instead of just feeling like you just have to push on through and that your plan needs to survive regardless of how you're feeling. And that includes not getting pulled by what everyone else is doing. So deciding what you're going to do and stick with it, what your friend is doing, what your mate at work swears by, what you've seen on that new Instagram account can make you feel like you're doing it wrong. But the thing that you can actually keep doing, and we know this from the research, is so much better for you than the thing that's working for someone else, which might be the right thing for them, but it doesn't mean that it's the right approach for you. But also ask yourself with those friends if you've seen evidence that they are sustaining this as well, because that's the other thing to look out for. Are they enjoying the process? Are they sustaining it? Do they have the same life that you have? So where does that leave us? Because we are focusing on fat loss without being on a diet, and we've covered a fair amount. But if we look back at those two camps, the all in or the all out, on the wagon, off the wagon, if you've spent years bouncing between the two of them, like a lot of you will have, then I do want you to start noticing how exhausting that actually feels. And it's not just the dieting that is tiring. It's that constant swinging from one extreme to the other. They're getting really serious about it. They're not being able to sustain it. The falling off, the guilt, the waiting for Monday, and then getting serious all over again. It is a cycle. And that swing is its own kind of full-time job. It means you always feel like you're on a diet, but never getting anywhere, because you each time are ending up roughly back where you started, just a little bit more tired, a little bit more convinced that you're the problem. So if there's one thing that I want you to take away from this episode, it's that you can lose weight and feel good in the process while actually living your life. Nothing has to go on hold for fat loss. You don't have to become a different, joyless person, or stop having any social events, or put your whole summer on hold until September, or I don't know, white knuckling your way through the bits that are meant to be enjoyed. There will be things that are going to make fat loss feel easier. And they're the things I mentioned at the beginning: meals with plenty of protein and fiber, nutrient-dense food that is going to fill you up and keep you feeling fuller and make it easier to not overeat. Moving your body, getting in a bit of resistance training to have you feeling strong and powerful body and mind, and having that awareness, that mindfulness of what you're eating. They are going to make fat loss feel easier, and they're definitely worth doing. But the other thing to understand is this is about doing those things consistently, not perfectly, and not every single day. There will be days that you won't be able to do those things, that they're not going to be as easy. Maybe your protein's not quite as high as it normally is, or your fiber's nowhere near where you wanted it. This is normal. One day where you're not quite hitting those goals, one day where calories are a little bit higher isn't going to undo anything. So what we're really doing is we're borrowing the useful bits while letting go of that all or nothing thinking that made it so hard. We're practicing flexible restraint. We're adapting and adjusting. We're understanding that we're human, that we are at a point where we don't want to be doing that yo-yo all or nothing approach anymore. We just want to have a different way of going about it. So when you look at that list, it's not a single diet, it's just health. Every single one of those is what we'd want to be doing anyway, whether we're trying to lose weight or not, because they're the things that keep you feeling strong, that keep you feeling good and help with your health long term, as well as having you feeling good in the short term. And that's why it was never a short term thing, because habits don't change overnight, no matter what people would have you believe about how long a habit can take to form. We build these habits over time, and it takes how long it takes from person to person. So if it is taking a while to feel automatic, you're not failing if you're doing it consistently, but we do need to give it a go first. When you do start to notice how they make you feel, perhaps when you're eating your meals high in protein and you notice that you're not snacking anywhere near as much as usual, and you're feeling better for that, or when you notice that when you move your body that it gives you more energy and you feel calmer, those things that you're noticing, they're hard to give up on, because you're not doing it for a number anymore. You're doing it because you feel better. And it's always worth taking a moment to reflect on that, how much better you feel for the changes you're making. And then what you're really doing is just becoming someone who lives that way without having to force it. The way that you're eating and you're moving, your goal ends up looking a lot like the way that you're going to move and eat once you've reached it. There's no end date and going back to normal, because you're making this your normal. And if that sounds terrifying, then it might be that you're trying to change things a bit too quickly. So dieting without dieting is not some trick. It's not some loophole that you can not have to do any of the things. It's just deciding that health isn't something that you only switch on for a length of a program and then off again the moment that you get there. It's just focusing on how you live. The losing weight, far more often than not, comes along as a byproduct of living this way, with still that intention there. So if this episode has resonated with you, then of course I would love it if you make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss the next episode, and leave a 5-star review. Do not forget that today is the last day to sign up if you want to be part of the Ruth McFit membership for August. I will put details of that, but also the waitlist for September if you wanted to join us for the autumn intake. Until next time, thank you very much and goodbye.